Ever wish a podcast would explain how to get better faster from the standpoint of longevity, biohacking, and personalized functional medicine? Co-hosts Dr. Jason Bradley and James Chester, along with executive producer Rachel Bradley, bring you the Get Better Faster podcast. Their mission is radically simple: to revolutionize health by connecting people with the experts, technologies, and protocols that mainstream medicine ignores. Because people deserve to get better faster.
Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only, James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're diving into something that hits close to home for me and for so many of us, the health of our pets. Because let's face it, when our fur babies are suffering, we're suffering. Our guest today is someone who's been revolutionizing how we think about animal health. She's affectionately known as Dr. Poop Lady, and trust me, that nickname tells you everything you need to know about her no-nonsense, get to the root of the problem approach. Dr. Odette Suter is a holistic veterinarian who helps pets struggling with gut problems, allergies, and complex chronic issues finally heal at the root. She's not interested in band-aids or symptom chasing. She's about repairing the microbiome, supporting detoxification, calming inflammation, and restoring health at the cellular level. She's the international best-selling author of not one, but 2 books, What Your Vet Never Told You and The Inside Effects. She's also the creator of the Pet Health Accelerator program that's helped pet parents worldwide cut through the noise of conflicting advice. Without further ado, Dr. Odette, my friend, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you both. I mean, I'm in awe of you both. And thanks to everyone listening, obviously. This is just so amazing because we need to spread information. So I'm really happy to be here and share what I know.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Jason, thank you for the great introduction here for Dr. Suter. Dr. Suter, I love your hat, by the way. I was like, there's only one problem here. We were sitting in the green room and I was like, you don't have your hat. And she goes, oh, should I put it on? And so thank you for wearing the hat. And as Dr. Jason said, you're known as the Poop Lady, which I have to say is one of the best nicknames in the medical world. But when did you realize that conventional veterinarian approaches weren't giving pets the healing they deserved? And what moment made you commit to this holistic path that you're on?
Yeah, so I always tell people I was born weird and I just grew weirder. Well, I mean, I'm going to thank my parents for that, especially my mom, because, you know, we grew up in rural Switzerland. We used to drink herbal teas and things like that when we were sick. And so I was already sort of, you know, exposed to it, if you will. And we grew up, you know, close to nature, you know, going with the rhythms of nature, having a vegetable gardens and all of that. So to me, you know, being connected that way was something I grew up with. But then certainly in vet school, I learned, you know, all the conventional things. But it was never really enough. I mean, actually, even before I went to vet school, I was doing a lot of horseback riding. And, you know, these horses, they were always stuck in like this little cell of a prison, you know, where they couldn't walk around much or even roll or whatever they would naturally do. And so even then I felt that there was something wrong with that. And so the horse I was taking care of, I was doing some Linda Tellington Jones T-touch, which is a similar, you know, kind of a type of massage. And people were always looking at me and asking, you know, what's wrong with your horse? You know, I'm like, there's nothing wrong. I'm just giving him a little extra attention. And so I think it was just already part of me on some level. And then certainly as I learned more and I was exposed to different situations that were sort of enhancing that, it just kind of kept growing. And then obviously the first job I had after vet school, it was basically antibiotics, painkillers, steroids, surgery, painkillers, you know, like it was just a repeat of things. And the animals were never really getting out of that cycle and coming back for the same issues over and over again. And so that certainly kind of got me on that path. And then having my own health issues, early on, certainly also reinforced that, because I knew that for whatever I had, which was chronic fatigue, at the time, the only thing that the doctor would tell you, well, it's all in your head kind of thing. So I knew that I had to go deeper and really look. And I always felt that if the body breaks, I should be able to fix it. So that's kind of, how I got to that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to hear people's origin stories and how they fall in love with the thing that makes them spark in this world. And I think as I listen to what you share, I'm even a little bit more curious. Would you mind going back in time a little bit further and telling me like how you became in love with like animals and like early beginnings, like what type of animals did you have around, and did you have like pets and things like that? Because I think that that's really the baseline for where we're going to spring into the future here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting. I'm certainly not like every other vet who would bring home injured animals and beg parents to have pets. In fact, when my mom decided she wanted a dog, I said, well, why do we need a dog? What do we need a dog for? So I wasn't really into animals at all as a kid. And then my sister was the one who always brought some animals home, and she ended up then dragging me to go horseback riding. She kept insisting I needed to go. And I was like, okay, well, whatever, I'll just go, because that way maybe she'll shut up. And that's basically where it started for me. It probably was sort of hidden underneath it all. And so then I just got the horse bug, and that was the end of it. And then obviously connected with all kinds of other animals at the same time as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason.
No, I think that's an amazing story. And Rachel and I have known you for a while now, and stayed connected on social media, which I absolutely love about social media. But I have a question. So James took us all the way back. I want to bring us up now. Mm-hmm. Where did Dr. Poop Lady come from? I got to know, there's this whole, moniker that you have, this whole identity that you've created. Tell me about Dr. Poop Lady.
Well, I started doing fecal transplants about 10 years ago, and people were always looking at me a little disgusted and grossed out when I would show up with my syringe with a slurry of poop and mixture in it. And knowing the nervous system and how important it is to be more in a parasympathetic mode, which is resting, relaxing, healing, I figured, what can I do to help my clients be a bit more relaxed about it? So I would do the exam, do my thing, and then go make my slurry in the back. And then I would come back wearing the poop hat. And everybody was laughing, which relaxed the whole situation in the room, because I wanted the person to relax. I wanted the animal to be more relaxed, which, they usually, that goes together. And so that's what started it. And then I did a few Facebook Live Q&A things, and I was wearing my hat, and then people were starting to call me Dr. Poop Lady. And they would send me things that had a relationship to poop, so all Christmas presents were some sort of a poop thing. So I have a whole collection in my closet of things that people sent me. And so that's kind of how that came about.
That's a very cool story. I actually did not know that about you at all. And I really appreciate fecal transplants. I mean, it's and also a whole decade ago. I mean, if we go back a whole decade, we're pre-pandemic. I would say, trying to remember a decade ago, it's, on one level, it seems like 100 years ago. On another level, it seems like it was yesterday. A decade ago, people weren't talking about, fecal, and just for that so I'll let you do the explanation. People weren't talking about fecal transplants. I know what that is. I think James knows what that is. But Dr. Odette, can you walk our listeners through what is fecal transplant? What is this? What'd you call it? A slurry? What'd you call it?
Yeah, slurry.
Yeah. What is this? Tell me the mechanism. What is it? What's the purpose? What does it do? Walk us through that.
Yeah, so the gut microbiome is basically an assortment of all kinds of microbes, including bacteria, bacteriophages, which are viruses, parasites, protozoa, algae, fungi, basically everything is sitting in the gut of the animals as well. And when that's balanced, then they are also producing balanced amounts of different nutrients, and they help the gut heal. They help promote health throughout the entire body, because microbes outnumber the body by a factor of 10, depending on whether the animal or us humans have just gone to the bathroom or not. And then and so they basically produce so many compounds, biochemical compounds, that are basically helping the body function properly. And so when the microbiome is imbalanced, we don't have that. So we don't have all these little, I call them the little elves that work day and night without fail. So we don't have enough of those. And so when I see that in an animal, and we can test for that, I will then do a fecal transplant. So basically taking the microbiome from a healthy donor dog or donor cat, and then inserting that into the one that has a microbial imbalance, basically. And so that's basically what fecal transplants are.
I think that's super interesting. Sorry to, James, I know you want to jump in here too, but what I've always said, and Dr. Odette, tell me, I might be wrong about this, but what I tell people is that healthy probiotic microbes in our microbiome, all the stuff that lives in our gut, they poop out active nutrients and other helpful compounds, and pathogens that we would consider, like the bad bugs, so to speak, they poop out toxins. Am I saying that the right way? Am I getting that right?
Well, in this world, we are so much about good and bad and pathogen and not pathogen. But when I was doing more research on the microbiome and microbes in general, there are really only maybe 1% at the most is really pathogenic, and it only becomes pathogenic if it's present in numbers that's too high. So we all have a little bit of salmonella, a little bit of E. coli, a little bit of whatever other microbes in our guts, but they're in a balanced position where there are other microbes that keep them in check. So the problem of causing disease is when they go up. So I know I sometimes say pathogenic too, but it's really more the terrain, how the distribution that makes it either pathogenic or not, because we can all, in a healthy state, deal with a little bit of toxins. And the question is also, if there's an imbalance, are they producing toxins to help recreate the balance? Because, for example, if we or an animal get salmonella or E. coli, we get diarrhea, right? So these chemicals that are being produced by salmonella and E. coli are chemicals that basically trigger the gut lining and the immune system and the nervous system to then create diarrhea. So as a result, then it's being flushed out. So are these toxins good or are they bad? So it's like, anyways, that's kind of my take on that. But yeah, we do have a lot of postbiotic, which is basically the poop of the microbes. And these postbiotics are things that are really important for the whole body. So they help with the gut lining, the integrity. They provide energy to the cells of the gut lining. They modulate the immune system so that it recognizes things that are either, potentially damaging or not damaging, and so on. So there are so many functions of these microbes in the gut.
I appreciate that, James. I swear I'm passing it over to you. I'm going to be done with the poop transplants myself here in a second. But I think it's fascinating, and I like what you said. Basically, I'm going to use a word that I use when I'm talking about the microbiome. I'm going to say opportunistic overgrowth. And I think that that's a way to look at it, where we have this balance that we want. I like that I use my hands because we're on audio for our streaming, and nobody saw what I just did with my hands, but I did a really cool balancing act with my hands there for our listeners. But we want balance in our gut. And one of the ways my simple brain looks at it is that and I know this isn't the way that it works, but our gut has, it's like a city. And it's a bunch of diversity in this city. and it's close quarters and everybody's living together, and there's all these apartment buildings. It's like our gut is lined with apartment buildings, and we want a lot of diversity. From my understanding, we want a lot of diversity of what species or who's living in those apartment buildings. And sometimes, for various reasons, those apartment buildings get abandoned by what we would call the good, beneficial community members, right? And we get these opportunistic, I call them pathogens, but I'll just say opportunistic microbes that kind of become squatters. No pun intended with, diarrhea and pooping, right? But they become these squatters, and they start to overgrow, and they start to really like take control of that community. And that's when we start to see symptoms, because the reality is we can have too much of a good thing. We always talk about, lactobacillus species and bifidobacteria and acrobancias and, all of these different, fecalis bacteria and et cetera. We talk about these things as though they're good, but the reality is, from what I'm gathering from you, we can have an overgrowth, not just of pathogens, but we could have an overgrowth of good things in our gut that can throw off the balance and throw off the health of the animal. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen, many animals actually do worse on a probiotic that's supposed to be helpful, where their symptoms get aggravated. And I always say, if you're feeding the wrong side of the imbalance, you're going to have a worse imbalance, and then you have worse symptoms. And I'm also using my hands here.
It was brilliant.
I know, right? So yeah, totally. I agree. It's a balancing act. And, that's what we see in the world too. We have created an imbalance, with all the toxicity and everything that we've done. And so now we're kind of reaping the benefits or the not so good benefits from that. But in the end, it's about balance.
Interesting. James, go ahead.
Well, it opens up a lot of thought process for me. Just the word slurry almost made me vomit out of my eyes. And the idea of taking fecal matter and putting it in another animal, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if the poop hat would make me feel comfortable. But I have questions. Is this because animals, they poop, right? They poop on the ground. How do you go collect the sample and not get rocks and twigs and grass and stuff into it when you collect it, and then you're gonna take it, and how do you take that and how do you take that and make it an ideal sample to reintroduce into another animal's rectum, I guess?
Okay, I'm going to try to explain, try to make your ears not start to vomit as well. So basically, you take the sample, obviously you pick it off the ground, and a donor dog's poop is going to be formed and quite solid. So it's not going to have a lot on it. And if it does, it can be pulled off. And so that's what I would do. Obviously, if I get a sample from a donor dog, I would do that before I then start mixing it with saline to make it into a slurry. And then I also put it through a sieve, because otherwise it would block the tube. So I take all the fibrous material out. So the slurry is really more like a milk chocolate drink.
Yum.
I'm just trying to turn you off to that as well. But anyway, so it's quite liquid, but I tried to make it as, anyways. Does that explain it?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting there. I know you're a veterinarian, and Dr. Jason's not a poop doctor, as I know. He does probably deal with some poop sometimes.
I deal with poop labs. My expertise is not in handling the fecal matter; it's in interpreting the data. So I'm impressed with Odette just on a sheer in the trenches, in the trenches.
Principle of it, yes.
Yeah.
Is this slurry? I don't know how to keep myself serious. I've never almost thrown up on a podcast before. And
you have a basket next to you?
No, I'm fine. If anything, it'd make good for TV.
Well, it may get everybody else to throw up too, and then we're all leaving.
I'll be careful.
And then, James, it might boost ratings. Even we'd be like, did you guys listen to that podcast where everyone that listens to it throws up? We're like the #1 podcast, and
Okay, now I'm starting to feel a little queasy, and more of the throw up talk, not so much the poop.
So it would be the other side of the postbiotic from the other direction. But is this a practice done with humans? I'm curious. Do you know, people collecting poop and like slurrying it and giving it back to other humans, making them improve their health?
Yes. I mean, FDA approval is only, basically if you have C. diff infection, you can get it done, but all other reasons to get a fecal transplant have to go through a research study somehow. So there's no FDA approval, but there are a lot of people who are doing fecal transplants. They just find a family member who doesn't have, gut issues or whatever they're trying to fix, and then they get a fecal transplant, they get a fecal matter from them. But there is information on the internet on what you would want to test, because you definitely want to make sure you're not getting back, pathogens, parasites, viruses, and all sorts of other things. So there would, the donor dogs or donor cats, they get tested for a number of different things before they even become donors. So if any humans who are listening are in need of help and you're wanting to do it yourself, make sure that you know what you're doing. But yeah, it's been done, and you want to make sure too that somebody isn't obese, the donor isn't, overweight. That can transfer. Because there are obesogenic bacteria and other microbes in the gut that can then basically manipulate the recipient's metabolism to then also go into that state. So
it's got my curiosity off the charts. And not many things as being a man, one time I was a boy, and nothing's greater than a good poop joke. So I'm at a whole nother level now as I go out into this free world, interact with people. And I'm just, without going down the wrong path, is this dogs, and specifically dogs, they don't have a problem with going and walking around and smelling another dog's poop
or eating it
or any other animals. They'll eat other animals' poop.
Our dogs have an affinity for horse poop. They really if they can get, we go out on some horse trails. We have 3 dogs, 2 Labradoodles and a cockapoo. They love James so much and miss him when he's not around. But we take them out and it's like a mad dash on the horse trail, who can get to the horse poop and then just gobble it up. And I don't have any idea why they do that, James. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's just real. That's real deal with our dogs.
Well, the other part of it is dogs, they don't ever have a problem with putting their nose right up on another dog's butt and getting a good whiff. And I just have to think that there's some type of capacity in all of that as it's okay and it's not taboo. But if I was to run up on another person and get a good smell of them, that's taboo.
Yeah, you might not feel so good afterwards because you get punched in the face.
And they'd be like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Well, in nature, many animal species will eat feces, including horses too. Foals, for example, they will start to eat their mom's poop because they're basically populating their own microbiome as a result of that. And certainly dogs are, big into that. I actually have dog patients who are very selective on which poop they will eat. So I have a client, she has 12 dogs or something like that. And one of them has had some GI issues, and he would only eat the poop of those of her animals who were mentally and emotionally balanced, because she rescues dogs, so some of them have some, emotional challenges. And so they are very selective. And I have another patient who had had food sensitivities to corn, and somebody in the household could not eat corn chips in a clean way, so he would get corn on a regular basis, and then he would have a flare of allergies. So I would do a fecal transplant on him. And then they got 2 other dogs into their family, younger dogs, and they would only eat this dog's poop. They would not eat their own or each other's, only that dog's. So they're very selective. And, going back to the horse trails, way back a few years back, I was taking care of a little dog, and she would be very selective about which horse poop she would eat. So she would ignore some, and others were like perfect. So they have an intelligence that we humans have lost. I mean, I don't think that humans were ever eating poop. I don't think so. But certainly we lived with microbes, and we got plenty of microbes and diversity. And that's why, when I'm at the airport, I go into a bathroom and I take a picture, and then with the caption, I'm getting my fecal transplant.
Right.
Because, when people flush, it flies around, right?
Or use those hand dryers that just recirculates the air. I am convinced that's just blowing poop particles around.
Yeah,
I'm convinced of it. Yeah. So no, but it's interesting that you say that, because our dogs, like I said, they don't eat each other's poop. We have a yard, and they go out and do their business. And I want to just thank our local service that comes once a week to clean our yard. I can't believe that this is an actual service that people can hire out, but thank God for these people that come every single Wednesday morning, and our yard is pristine for like 2 hours before the dogs go back out. But at any rate, but they will eat that horse poop like it's candy, or I mean, literally like the deer poop that's like little, chocolate covered raisins for them. I mean, they gravitate toward these other animals' feces, but it sounds like, and I understand, like in humans, we call that, cacophagia, eating poop, put poop in your mouth. And I just like caca. That's the easy way to remember that, because, right? So, at any rate, dogs, though, it sounds like it's not really a disorder. It sounds like there's nothing really wrong with them doing it. It's just, they're looking somewhere in their innate intelligence, which in chiropractic, we talk about the universal intelligence, the God source that created all things, and the intelligence that's in all things. And the innate intelligence is that piece of that God source that's inside of each one of us. It sounds like those dogs' innate intelligence knows, I need some diversity. I better eat some horse poop or some deer poop or this dog's poop, and that, or maybe not that dog's poop. Am I interpreting that right? It's not necessarily a nutrient thing. It could be.
It could be too, because I've seen one dog, or I have one dog client, she was basically eating all dog poop indiscriminately. And it wasn't until we started to add some nutrients to her food in a different way that she stopped. And her microbiome was actually completely perfectly balanced being on that poop diet. But I think she in her case, she was missing nutrients.
Interesting.
In other cases, I think it's more the replenishing of the microbes and basically self-medicating on some level. So, but, I always tell people, be careful, that you still don't just let them eat whatever they want to eat. You still have to be a bit careful, because there are so many dogs that are medicated. They get antibiotics, God knows what. So, I guess if, you just want to be a little careful.
James, go ahead.
Your next book, Eat This Poop, Not That Poop.
Yeah, good one. Good one.
Good title. I want to get that now. I think that we could probably talk about poop all day. As a naturopathic physician, I'm a doctor of chiropractic and also a naturopathic physician. I talk about poop all day, every day with so many people. It seems like, just because our health could be determined by that. That said, I do want to just give a shout out to my friend and research colleague, Dr. Calvin Carter, who way back in like the 20 teens was when fecal microbiota transplants, FMTs, fecal transplants were kind of coming to light. I don't know how else to say that, but coming to light. So again, Dr. Odette, super early adopter here within her practice of this. So like when we talk about 10 years ago, we're really talking about the 2000 teens. And this is really like before it became, I don't even know if it's mainstream, but however mainstream it is now, this is very early adopter. Dr. Calvin Carter said, or was working on a project where, and I'm going to tell you my version of it. I'm sure there's a sciencey version of this, but this is his pitch to me. And I'm like, hey, doc, what are you working on? He's always working on medical tech. And he's like, I've got this idea that people can do their own fecal transplants. And what they need is a blender, a healthy donor, and some saline. And then I don't think he used the word slurry, but basically you throw that stuff in there and then, give it to the person that has, the IBS, IBD, whatever, for whatever reason we're doing the transplant. And he's like, my problem is I'm having a hard time getting the FDA to approve this medical device. And I'm like, that sounds like a lot of hoops to be like, we need a blender to make our slurries so that we can, drink poop or eat poop. I was fascinated by it, but really, in the absurd, it never did, by the way, he never got that launched. But in the absurdity of the concept of that, it works, is what I'm hearing from you. There's probably more to it than what I just shared, but it sounds like you get a healthy donor, mix it together with some saline, make a slurry, and then you get it into the animal that's struggling. Here's my question. In humans, there's pills, right? Or there might be other means to get it into, but there's pills now that they can take for fecal transplants. How do you get it into a dog or a cat or a horse? How do you do this?
Yeah, so with dogs and cats, we have capsules as well now.
Okay.
So Animal Biome, they are making capsules, but slurries have benefits because you can put a lot more in it at a given time, because in a capsule, you can only put so much into a capsule. When you're doing a slurry, you're basically flooding the GI tract with the microbes, and that's still kind of my preferred version, but oftentimes it's not possible because you have to find a vet who is willing to do it. And so on. But it's very simple. It's, animals tolerate it really well. It's a tube that I stick up their butt, and I have a video somewhere on that to demonstrate. And so it's easy. If a dog can tolerate a rectal thermometer, then they will be able to tolerate that just fine. No issue at all with that. And then horses, horses is a whole different story because they have such a long and huge voluminous GI tract that if you do a rectal transplant, it will not go very far. So usually they will do it with a nasogastric tube, get it into the stomach. Because, horses are not really that great with taking capsules, I think, mostly, so that would be harder. Plus the amount that you would have to put in would be impossible to do that with capsules. So it's a little bit more challenging because a nasogastric tube, let me tell you, horses don't really appreciate that very much.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Is that okay?
Wait, I have at least one more question on fecal transplants. Can I get it in?
Yep, do it.
All right. So we've established, and again, I'm thinking of Arthur, Finnegan, and Winston, our dogs, right? And they're eating this poop. It's probably good for them out in the wild, probably. It's, I don't want to say that one way or another, but I'll just go with a probably. Whenever I catch them eating poop, I have a visceral response to it. And I'm like, get away from that. James been out on hikes with me where I'm like, get away from there, get out of here, and then the dogs take off like they just got away doing something, go find the next poop, and they start eating that. Anyway, our walks are much more than just eating poop, but there's a potential for that on every walk. But nonetheless, every single time that happens, I say, that's why I don't let them kiss me. And I say those words out loud because Rachel doesn't mind it. And our daughters, and they're adult children, by the way, Adeline and Violet, they actually encourage the dogs to kiss them. Give me a kiss. And then the dogs do their, stuff out there. And all I'm thinking is those dogs put poop in their mouth regularly. So here's my question. And I'm going to bring in another, I don't know if it's an old wives' tale or if it's real. But I have seen in humans, I know we're talking about animals, but I have seen in humans a fair bit of H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori infections, which can cause a whole bunch of gastric distress and ulcers and, a whole bunch of stuff. And I know animals get this too. I totally know that. What I've heard is that a lot of humans can get H. pylori transferred from their animals to them. So like a dog to human transfer, because they get those kisses. Do you know, have you heard that? What are your thoughts on that? And do we need to be concerned about our animals kissing us after eating poop?
Well, I mean, regarding H. pylori, I mean, I do quite a fair number of microbial, biome testing, and it's been very rare that I've actually seen H. pylori. Whether it may not make it all the way to the end, because I know, for example, in humans, when you're doing a biome test, it's not representative of the whole GI tract because it's too long.
Right.
And small animals, dogs and cats, they have a much shorter GI tract. So it seems to be more representative. So the poop is more representative of everything that's happening in the GI tract. But whether H. pylori really gets all the way out there, I don't know. I think of all the samples I've sent in, I think I've only seen 1 or 2 that had H. pylori.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's really more of a human thing and the humans are transmitting it to their animals or vice versa.
Interesting.
Because there is a study that was done where they basically checked the incidence of C. diff infection, which is hospital-acquired infection that causes diarrhea in humans, and looked at, how many of these people actually had animals, dogs in particular, and basically they found that having a dog is protective of getting H. pylori from after a hospital stay or during a hospital stay. So I think that even though I know it's disgusting, I personally do not like to be licked by a dog either. Air kisses are fine. The rest, you can keep to yourself. But the thing is, if we live with animals, we will get microbes from them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing because it creates more diversity for everyone. So they get some of ours and we get some of theirs. So it just adds diversity, which is a good thing.
I love it. I have one more poop question. I have some questions around testing, but I have one more poop question because you said something that I thought was super interesting. You said a lot of super interesting things. And thank you for that. But we glanced over something that I don't know if our listeners heard. And you said, hey, when you're getting your fecal donor, make sure that they're not overweight, obese, because there are some not pathogens. There are some microbes that I know this from mouse studies for sure. If we transfer certain obesogenic or fat-causing microbes from a microbiome that has an overgrowth in those microbes to a skinny mouse, so to speak, those mice, without changing diet or anything else, those mice will develop obesity as well. So it's almost like we can transfer this idea, because a lot of people say like, well, I'm overweight because, my genes, I've got the genes for being, maybe that's could be true. My mom was overweight, my dad was overweight, and I'm overweight, and it's just the genes that I have. And then I just wonder how much of it is around that shared microbiome that gets passed on from generation to generation. I mean, just some thoughts there. But we know all that from lab studies. Here's the question that I don't know. Can we take skinny microbes or skinny related microbes and put them into overweight people and then see them losing weight? I don't know if I'm asking the right. I know we can go the other way. Obese microbes causing obesity and overweight in the recipient. Can we take the skinny microbes or skinny causing microbes, or are there any, put them in an overweight person, obese person, and then see weight loss with a fecal transplant? I guess I'll change person to animal. But yeah, do you have, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if studies were done in humans, but I know studies were done in mice because they did one and then they reversed it. So I know that in theory it should work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now people have choices between GLP-1s, Ozempic and all the stuff that's causing the muscle wasting and all the dangers that come with that. They can just find skinny donors and then get a fecal transplant maybe. I don't know. We're opening up options for people, James. So.
Well, for sure, because for example, I'm a total chocoholic and I switched my diet and did a bunch of things. I haven't had much chocolate in like maybe a year. And now when I eat chocolate, I'm like, Okay, well, I guess it was okay, but it's not the same. And so it changed my microbiome because it was my microbiome probably screaming, you need chocolate, or you need some sugar or whatever it was, calling for. And so I think when we change the microbiome, it can also change, how, well, lifestyle can change the microbiome, obviously, but vice versa, it could also change it.
Well, and there's so many downstream effects, James. I'm pitching it right over to you. But, we talked with Kieran Krishnan, who's the, one of the human, if not the top human microbiome experts. And he wasn't really chatting about this, but at the same time, saying things like it's not just about gut health. This is about metabolic health and brain health and stress chemistry and hormone balance and all of that kind of stuff. So I know that what we're talking about is not just, my dog has diarrhea and I need to give, my dog, a fecal transplant. There's so much more going on. But James, I know you're been salivating to jump in here, and I'm hogging the show. So let me pass it right over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to this. There's probably 5 to 6 things I'm curious about asking, but I'm going to go with the first thing first. Is we're talking about how to make an animal healthy. I like the phraseology yes or yes, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about making animals healthy, and there are different pathways to get animals healthy. And most of the time, we talk about how to get people better faster. Well, today we're talking about how to get animals better faster. What is the best way to keep animals to live longer? Because I know that that's a big concern for a lot of people in this time. And, we become, I guess, adaptive to the family member, which we call our pet, or we call the animal, the dog, the cat, the horse. What is your number one strategic advice to somebody that wants their dog or cat or horse or their pet to live longer?
Okay. I think the most important would be to think about health and disease in a different way, because we are so programmed to think there's a symptom or a disease. What pill can I use? What supplement can I use? What herb can I use? And that is just the wrong thinking, because that will never get you the result that you're looking for, with healing. So we have to insert another question. So we need to find out, what's happening, why is it happening, and only then can we know what to do. And I think that's the biggest block out there. And then the second part would be, people that I speak with most often think that if they only found the right diet, their animal would heal. But it's much more complicated. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, changing diet, from like a high processed kibble to a raw food, species appropriate diet, took care of a lot of things. Nowadays, it doesn't. Nowadays, if I were to do that, they actually get sicker. So there are a whole lot of other things that we need to do to help these animals. And I know it is frustrating, it's sad, but nowadays, it is very difficult to heal the body on your own if you don't have some medical knowledge to know how to. And I'm talking about functional medicine, which is basically what you guys also do, right? Jason and such. So it's really multifaceted. There's not one thing that will change it. It's like a combo of different things that are needed.
I just want to comment, James, real fast. I want to put a stamp on that too, Dr. Odette. I've noticed the exact same thing. I've been in practice for 26 years, and 26 years ago, practicing functional medicine, early adopter, it was a whole lot easier to help people reclaim their health than it is now. It used to be just like, hey, you know what? Stop eating McDonald's and eat some real foods and move a little bit and drink enough water, and maybe we supplement with X, Y, or Z. And now that's all still necessary. Like that's the hard part, is all of that is still necessary. but I'm finding that people's, especially nutrient levels are so low. I don't know if it's our food is devoid of nutrients. The stress levels are so high. I mean, there's so many things here, toxins, around in our environment. I mean, the list goes on and on that, Rachel and I have constructed our methodology is just to peel it back layer by layer by layer from both the foundational, we call them the pillars of, hydration, diet, movement, nervous system regulation, sleep, and community. I mean, yes, lay down that foundation, but what we've had to do with our chronically ill clients is literally start rebuild the gut, eliminate food sensitivities, help balance hormones, get their nutrients where they need to be. I mean, the list goes on, and it's just so much more complex to get to that level of health. But I will say, once we get people there, it's actually not too hard to stay there. It's just getting them there. But James, go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, Jason makes like some very valid points, and you did too, Dr. Suter. It's like you used to say that knowledge is power, right? And you said you got to have people in your network that have knowledge on health. And I guess that's kind of the caveat for why I started Chiro Hustle, the podcast that Dr. Jason was talking to you about earlier, is because I wanted to get exposure to the truth, to where people weren't getting the truth about real health. I wanted them to have access points to people that do things different. And that's a big part of why we started Get Better Faster movement, because I wanted people to get access to other people that did things differently, that might be able to help them and give them answers that they were curious about, that they needed help with. So coming from where I come from, I know that you give somebody the best advice in the world. Like I could tell you, Odette, this is how you go make $1 million. It takes you between 12 to 18 months to go implement and do it. It's not just something that you just snap your fingers and, oh boy, life is like on the fast track to making $1 million. And it's the same way with people in their health. If Dr. Jason's like, do this, I'm going to give an analysis. Now you got to go get blood work. Now I got to analyze the blood work. Now we need to determine what your deficiencies are. Now we got to put you on a plan. Now we got to reassess you from the plan. So it's not so much that we don't have access to brilliant solutions. We just have to become better at the application and fielding the resources the right way. And I think that that's a big culmination of today's topic and today's conversation did we talk a little bit about shit? Yeah, we did. But is there a solution there for somebody that might need that information, that might need that knowledge nugget, that they can go now and find a way to be in application phase? I think that that's the big thing, is people have to apply knowledge to get them to where they need to go for not only themselves, but their families. So I think there's a lot to it. And one of the things you mentioned there, Dr. Suter, was the diet. Like you a big word that you used there was kibble. And I think when you think about like animals eating, they used to say the reason that you're sick is because it's not what you eat, it's because what you eat eats. And now we're talking about poop, from eating things that ate something to eating it to now pooping it again. So we're on this whole different, nitrogen cycle with life science, with the poop cycle now. But let's talk about like the beginning of that cycle. Like, can you change the trajectory of a pet's life by changing its diet and giving it real, like, what would you determine real food, and how do you determine how you feed it?
Yeah, certainly. And there are studies, and just recently they published an article in the AVMA journal, which is the American Veterinary Medical Association, which is very, conventionally oriented. But there was a published paper in there where they were listing all of the research that's being done with feeding real food versus, compared to feeding high processed food, which is, high heat, high everything, and extruded, and I mean, really nasty stuff, in my opinion. So, there's definitely more awareness coming, and certainly the market of fresh, healthy foods for animals has grown significantly, whereas kibble is coming down because people are starting to realize that the advice of feeding the same kibble, high extruded, same protein for the entire life of the animal was not really a good idea. Because in the human field, if a doctor were to tell you need to feed your kid Cheerios for their entire life, they would say you're insane. And basically, that's what's a little bit happening in the animal field. But basically, species appropriate diet to me means the closest to what nature provides. So an animal would go out, a dog or cat would go out and hunt some prey, eat that prey, go sleep it off, and then go back out when it's hungry again and hopefully catch something. So it's about what they eat, it's when they eat, how often they eat, because I know in the human field there's a lot of talk about fasting, intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting, things like that. Well, we have that in animals as well, because nature never provided something on a regular basis. It's not like, oh, the rabbit is going to come by at 5 o'clock. I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to show up and then I'm going to pounce on it. It doesn't work that way. So they have to exercise to get their food. They have to be alert. They have to kind of sniff around. So they're stimulating their brain. So everything is kind of, stimulated. So the closer we can feed them to what they would get in the wild, the better, including mimicking the whole, surrounding of eating.
And that gets me to the follow-up. Like you see these commercials on television. I haven't owned a television, I think, in 16 years, by the way. But I sometimes will catch myself watching a game at a restaurant or something, and there's these commercials about different new age style food blends that are fresher and in refrigerators and gourmet almost. What is your thoughts on that stuff?
Well, it's certainly moving in the right direction, and it depends on what it is. There are a lot of foods that, there are different foods. There's fully raw. There's some raw that's been high pressure pasteurized, which also changes the structure of the food. Then you have freeze dried, which is also not the word, is also still pretty decent because it's low in carbohydrates, because that's what you want, is just low carb. Because dogs and cats have zero requirements for carbohydrates, and I believe humans are kind of the same that way as well. Carbs intake. And then you have the ones that are lightly cooked, and then you have some that are baked, and then you have high extrusion. So there are different levels of quality. So I don't know exactly what you're seeing in these commercials, but certainly anything that's a little bit more natural is already headed in the right direction. But on the other hand, there are also companies that use all sorts of marketing terms to appeal to their audience, like natural or added omega-3s or from happy cows or whatever they will write on the package to basically appeal to the audience. But then you have to look at the reverse of the package and look at the label and look at the ingredients. That's really where things then get real. So you can't just look, because Kibble, they will have a picture of a perfect chunk of steak on it or vegetables. And I'm like, okay, that's not what's in the bag, really.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that answer. I hope it gives some people out there clarity on how to feed their pets better. And I know that Jason's probably got 5 to 6 things lined up over there to talk about, but I just wanted to get a complete cycle here with you. 3 things that pop up to me, and then I know we're going to take some deeper dives on things like inoculations for pets. Mm-hmm. But can we go rapid fire 3 things?
Sure.
Microplastics with pets.
Yeah.
Because I know that they're chewing on all these things and they're not real things and they're eating them actually. What can you give me a rapid fire microplastics with pets?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to humans because everything is packaged in plastic, and especially with high pressure pasteurization, they have the food in the plastic and then they put a lot of pressure on it. So that probably drives plastic right into the food.
But
even
I'm
more.
talking more about chew toys and like
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
like
definitely.
like balls and like things that you buy from like the dollar store, and people like have their dogs chewing on these and eating these things.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem. Yeah. And it's not just microplastics, it comes with all kinds of other stuff too, chemicals, things like that,
Well, so what would you suggest for pet owners as a solution instead of that?
Well,
Like,
find something more natural, like bully sticks, for example, raw meaty bones, where there's still bone on it. Meat on it. With bones, you have to be a little careful because they can also break teeth. So certainly there's more information out there, which would go beyond the rapid fire thing. But certainly there are natural things to chew on. You give them a duck foot or like a trachea or some other things that can be found in natural pet stores often.
Next question. People sleeping with their pets. What's your take on that?
If it works for them, there are studies that are showing that women sleep better when they have a pet in the bed. And there are others like Dr. Jason who probably would prefer not having the dogs in the bed. So I think in the end, you have to kind of figure out on your own whether it works for you or it doesn't.
It's true. If Rachel had it her way, we'd have all 3 dogs in the bed all the time, and they get bed privileges, but it's not with us through the night. The girls, man, they're like, can I have one or all the dogs every night? They're anytime they're home around, they want all the dogs.
I don't believe dogs belong in beds. That's my take. But next thing, cats and pets.
It's interesting though about women wanting, like, maybe women sleep better. Maybe there's like some innate intelligence driving this, and maybe it doesn't affect men the same way. And maybe, I don't know, there's something interesting there. Thank you for letting me think about that. Anyway, James,
I'm like they eat their own poop. They don't belong in my bed. Like, Odette, you don't want them licking your face. Why do you want them in your bed?
Well, I don't have a dog, so there you go. And if I go visit my sister who has a dog, I always tell her, please do not let him into my room. When I sleep, I do not want to be disturbed, but I don't sleep that well. So for me, it wouldn't work unless I had a dog who's always sleeping with me, because then you get used to it. But just this one time, I'm like, no, I don't want no dog in my bed.
Coming from an expert, guys, listen to her.
Absolutely.
And
well, do what's right for you. I'm not.
All I heard was no dogs in bed.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
You said no dogs in bed for you.
For me, yeah.
I got you.
I also hear that people that have cats have some type of adaptive state where they get some type of parasite. Is that like an old wives' tale, or is that true?
Well, we can get parasites from all kinds of animals, and then also from whatever food we eat and things. So we all have parasites. I hope I'm not breaking a bubble here, but we all have parasites. I know, Jason, you know that, but James, I see your disgusted face. So you're like,
Well, I just hear that sometimes people like that have cat owners specifically get some type of like condition that dogs don't give, but they only get from cats.
Cats have parasites that they can transmit, and it's particularly an issue for women that are pregnant.
Yes. That's what
I've also heard, James, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, but I've heard that, I think it's Toxoplasma gondii.
Yes.
And how it's related to a higher incidence in humans. Okay, let me say it again. Toxoplasma gondii, parasite from cats, is related to a higher incidence in humans of schizophrenia, diagnosed schizophrenia. Yes. I don't know much more about that than what I just shared, but I find that curious.
That was my curious point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think they did some studies with wolves, or no, was it? I don't remember, some animal, where they basically found that if they had toxoplasma in their brain, their behavior was changing, where they became more assertive, more fearless. So There's definitely, parasites they're really interesting. I'd love to dive in a little bit more on those because they have such survival strategies and they help the host and they also can damage the host depending on how many are there. So there's definitely a lot of yeah, there's a lot. I was doing a bit of a deep dive at one point, but I don't remember all of it. But it was really interesting, because they use parasites for to treat autoimmune diseases and things like that as well. And when you look at third world countries, for example, that definitely have a lot more parasites probably than we do, they hardly have any chronic diseases like we do in this world. So.
Well, I think
that we're lacking certain parasites.
Well, it's interesting because you brought up earlier that we like to, including myself. I mean, it's just easy it's easy discussion, black and white, good, bad, this and that. But the reality is that humans, animals, all of it. I mean, we're animals. We've all. I'm going to say this as I always say it. We were created or we evolved or we were created to evolve. You can choose any of the weapons there that work best for your logic. But we have a symbiotic relationship with all of these organisms. They've been around forever. It's not like all of a sudden we have Toxoplasma gondii that's, a brand new creation that we created. And then now we have this new parasite that we have to deal with. I mean, we've had domesticated cats since, ancient Egypt. Coexisting with humans, domesticated dogs, even earlier than that. And we've cohabitated with these animals, with these parasites that we would consider bad in ultra hygienic, American society. These I labeled them earlier pathogens, that were like, oh, those are bad. We have to grow our food in a certain way. I'm not saying I subscribe to this. I'm just saying that, this is the common idea. We have to grow our food in a certain way, spray stuff on it so we get rid of all these microorganisms, irradiate it so that we're killing everything. So that by the time we get this food into our bodies, it's an ultra pure, ultra cleansed, ultra hygienic food. There's this idea that things might be too hygienic and that we might actually be doing ourselves a disservice of this purification process, if you will. And it's interesting because I have found with my human patients that when I suggest things like go dig in the dirt, do some gardening, do some work with plants, because the soil bacteria, the bacillus species and other, types of soil spore bacteria are wonderful for our microbiome and allow for diversity and this and that and the other thing. And I'm thinking about our dogs and the way they're out there in the dirt and nosing their nose in the dirt and digging in the dirt and eating grasses and eating poop and all this. And it's kind of like, they don't have that filter of things need to be hygienic. They're just doing what's inside of them. And I think that, again, coming back to the universal intelligence that we talked about and the innate intelligence, there's a third intelligence called the educated intelligence, which I always say gets in the way of the other two more often than not, So I just wonder about that, but anyway, that's thank you for that because I have a lot to think about parasites because I had how many people every month they get a hold of us like, do you guys do parasite checks? Can we get the stool study done? What do you do for parasites? And I'm kind of like you, Dr. Odette, like the longer I do my work, the more I'm more interested in diversity, balance, and not what I would call, like I used to do kill sequences. We find something, we kill it. We find something, we kill it. And I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for that. There might be if there's a massive overgrowth, but I found that more coaxing the microbiome, helping to regenerate growth in the colonies and the species that we want more of, and decreasing growth of the colonies and species that we maybe don't need more of. It sounds like we're on the same page with humans and other animals, our furry, family members as well. So I appreciate all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, because they were here way before we were.
Yeah.
Bacteria, they showed up like 3 billion years ago or something like that. So they are amazing at evolution. They have mastered evolution. They can change and adapt to something that's different within a few hours. We as multicellular organisms, we don't have that capacity. So we have to rely on the microbes that are in and around us to help us evolve because, I mean, I can't change shape in I couldn't even change shape in a lifetime. I mean, sure, I'm getting older, so it's going to show, but so I'm changing shape that way. But I mean, they can completely change within just a few hours. And so they're really the ones that are helping us evolve, because we do not live in the same world than we lived like even 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because we have created such a polluted mess on this planet. And so they're the ones that are going to save us and help us adapt to what's happening, because otherwise we humans, just us without microbes, parasites, etc., we do not stand a chance. So we need them. So we better make friends with them again. That's kind of my take on it.
I think that you're delivering a lot of just valuable content, valuable information to so many people out there that are curious about these topics, and they don't have access to you. So I appreciate you giving us access to your mind and to your knowledge, and letting us be novices, or letting us share our insights too, because I think a lot of the topics we talk about, other people are just like, they don't have the capacity to have the access point. And I just think that it's really cool that we can talk to you about topics that I'm sure other people are curious about, and they have, these inside track, wishing that they had this person that they could ask a question to. And there are people that are asking questions over in the chat feed. Maybe we can get back to them after the show. But last thing, and then I want to pass it to Jason, because I know we do want to talk about animals and vaccines. But dog parks. What is your take on dog parks? I know earlier you said, hey, I'm not a big fan of like bridling horses and keeping them in some type of like little containment. Dog parks didn't exist when I was a kid. Okay. Like you just had a dog in your yard and you like walk the dog. And now we have like things called dog parks. Like, what is your take on a dog park?
Well, in theory, they sound good. In practicality, not so much, because there are a lot of accidents and things that can happen at the dog park, because a lot of pet parents may not be as responsible as you. They may not be paying as attention to their dog as much, or they are so proud of their animal that their animal can't do anything wrong, even though it is pestering other dogs, humping them, so there's a lot of moving parts there. So personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, just because there are a lot of things can happen that could,
Yeah, I mean,
if there are only a couple of dogs there, if you go at a time of day where there's hardly anyone there, that's a different story. But, then you have Hoshmo bring whoever dog they have, because they may not feel like they want to go for a walk. And so they're basically substituting a walk with dog park because it's easier and more convenient or whatever. They're not training their animals, they have no recall on them. There's just
I would just like, I would like to see the research on how many dog fights and like people getting bit at dog parks, specifically outside of just walking to their dog and having a dog in their yard. Like I always thought that, like, I just thought it was kind of a very interesting thing that people needed to have a dog park to take their dog to. And I get it. Like, aren't all parks dog parks?
It can be great for socialization, and all that. But again, there's too much that can happen, because dogs obviously communicate with each other. But if somehow something interferes with that, or they never learn to communicate correctly, because oftentimes when you have a dog that's leash reactive, for example, it could be the other dog that's basically yelling at your dog in some way, and having like a threatening sort of position, because body language in animals is subtle, and we may not pick up on that. For example, I had a client, she went with her dog, and her dog grabbed another dog's ball. And then the owner of the other dog told her dog, go get the ball, go get the ball. Well, they got in a fight, but it was because the owner of the other dog kept pushing her dog beyond what my client's dog was telling her, no, this is my ball now. I got it. I'm keeping it. You stay away. And then when the owner kept pushing her dog to go get the ball, they ended up in a fight. So, things like that can happen.
Supplement insurance out there for anybody curious. Get dog park insurance.
Or just stay away from them and give them exercise. But there are I don't remember what the company's name is now, where you can rent a yard.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it's called, but basically, people, it's kind of like Airbnb or something, where you can just basically have go there and bring your dog and let them run around free, because I think they should be able to run around freely, and not everybody has the option to do that. If they live in a community where there's no ability to do that, if they don't have a backyard or anything like that. So those can be good options too, where it's a bit more controlled.
Great information. Dr. Jason, back to you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. I have learned so much on this call, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for your questions. You guys are amazing.
You're amazing.
Having so much fun here.
I am too. I have, and I do want to dive into the whole vaccines. I have a lot of questions around vaccines and commentary myself. But before I do that, I came across, so again, we have our dogs, and I get hooked into, various things on my social media feed. And I swear our devices listen to us and then feed us things. Oh, yeah. But at any rate, one of our dogs, our middle dog, Finnegan, he is about, I don't know. I think he's either 7 or 8. Rachel would know. I feel bad not knowing, but 7, 8-year-old Labradoodle. He's got a wonderful disposition. He's a sweet dog. But I will say a commentary and then a question. When we go to we don't go to dog parks anymore, because what we noticed is if our other 2 dogs, our little cockapoo, and then I still call him the puppy, Winston, who's now 4 years old, but still acts like a puppy. If there were other dogs bullying either of those dogs, our very well-mannered, our Finnegan, that's like super chill, everybody's best friend, he will go tell those other dogs to leave his brothers alone. Like he does not like that. He will step in like, you're not going to bully my brothers around. And he has a side to him where I'm like, I don't know that that's good at the dog park. He's a great dog. I'm not really worried about him, but he doesn't do well at the dog park. He doesn't do well at the dog park in those situations. So we just stopped going. But beyond that, he also has lipomas. And I know, I've had some labs. I've had another Labradoodle. And it seems like, I don't know if it's a breed thing or what size thing. I don't know what it is, but they've all developed these lipomas. I've not really ever thought much about it. When we talk to the vets, they're like, oh, it's a lipoma. I know in humans, it's like, well, is it causing a problem? Is it causing pain? Is it restricting motion? All these things, don't really worry about it. But then in my social media feed, out of the blue, I started getting these lipoma. Hey, does your dog have lipomas? It's because they don't have access to all these, specifically wild turkey tail mushrooms that they would be eating out in the wild. And if they were eating this turkey tail mushroom, it'll dissolve the lipoma over time. And so I just want to be real honest about this. I got sucked right into it, and I subscribed to some kind of shipment that comes every single, month or every couple weeks or whatever it is, where we get turkey tail mushrooms, and I don't know, there might be a probiotic in it. I'm not really sure. I don't want to name the brand. There's a few brands that are out there. I don't know enough about it to endorse one. I just bought it, and we mix it in, and I think it's, quote, bacon flavored. I don't even know what that means, but it's some kind of flavoring that the dog likes. It's supposed to be all natural and, all this stuff. Anyway, I sprinkle it. The cockapoo gets 1 scoop at the end of the day. Winston, so Arthur gets 1 scoop. Winston, our puppy, middle dog, he gets 2 scoops. And then Finnegan, our largest dog, gets 3 scoops. I mix it into their food, and they seem to love it and just eat it. Now, we've been doing this for a little bit of time. I don't know how long, but let's just say a little over a month. And Rachel has said, I think that Finnegan's lipomas are getting smaller. I don't know if that's true or not. I will say what I noticed was that he had a little, I know we talked about in the green room, we talked about animal chiropractic. When I would, pet Finnegan's hair or his back, he'd have a little spot at his thoracolumbar junction where he would twitch a little bit. If you just barely, no matter what, he would just twitch. He doesn't do that anymore. I was actually pressing on it. earlier in the day and yesterday, and he's not reactive at all to that area. And I don't know if it's the turkey tail mushroom or what, but my question is lipomas, turkey tail mushroom. Is there any truth to this?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of theories on lipomas and things, but to be honest with you, I usually just treat the animal, and if the lipoma goes away, great. If it doesn't, then I'm not too worried about it. But I'm sure that, turkey tail mushroom, probably because it's a prebiotic and has some other immunomodulating functions, that it may be affecting the level of inflammation in his body, his gut, how the gut is functioning, and just having some effects that way. And maybe as a result of the gut functioning better, he may be detoxifying better, because I'm thinking that, toxins tend to store in fat, especially the fat, obviously the fat soluble ones. And I've always wondered if these lipomas are just the way the body kind of segregates some of the toxins, takes them out of circulation and hides them away. So I'm thinking that maybe whatever you're doing with the turkey tail may just be optimizing overall health and detox at the same time, decrease inflammation, that sort of thing.
That's interesting. Thank you. I appreciate that. So what I heard was, to translate that, was probably not hurting them, and it might be helping them, and no reason to stop it necessarily.
Yeah. Okay. But I would still probably look at the label and see what's really in it, because you may also find one that may be of a higher quality potentially, because oftentimes, they will have some natural flavors and quotation marks that are anything but natural, or sugars and things like that. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You said it's a powder, so it's probably rather clean, I would think. Chews, when something comes in a chew, I don't like chews because they usually have a lot of junk in them as well, mixed in. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. These are the types of it's doing things like this, which is why Rachel and I never have any discretionary money, because we just buy, we subscribe to so many things. I'm just teasing, but we really do. We subscribe to, we get sucked into these things. Another question. Same puppy, our 4-year-old puppy, Winston, Labradoodle. He is I've had a lot of dogs in my life. I mean, I've always had at least one dog my entire life. Winston has the best disposition of any dog. I mean, he's so happy. He's so adventurous. He's up for anything. He's just so easy. He's so easy. He's easy to train. I swear he's the smartest dog I've ever had. I could keep going on about Winston. But Jay sent me a meme last night that said something like, if my dog could win an award for barking, and then it was a picture of a black lab that had 150 medals around his neck. And so I took that into AI and I changed it into Winston, because it's not like he incessantly barks, but he's really quick to bark. If he hears something, he's gonna go bark and hey, I hear something. What is that? And then, that can get the other dogs barking, and they really don't bark a whole lot otherwise. But Winston riles them up a little bit. I want to be really clear. It's not really a problem. I wouldn't say this is a behavioral issue. It's not all the time. It's just if he hears something and is curious at all about anything, he's going to bark, and he might bark for a little bit until we're like, Winston, come on, man. It's getting better about stopping. But my question is, Rachel, because I'll comment about this. James has experienced it in our house. James hears it when we're on calls. Rachel always says, I think it's because he's anxious. And I'm like, he exhibits no symptoms of anxiety zero symptoms of anxiety. And I really, really mean that. He's the coolest, most chill dog ever, except for this thing. I know this is a big behavioral question, but what causes a dog that otherwise seems to exhibit literally zero issues about anything? He's good with other dogs. He's good with other humans. He's easy to train. He's very smart. He's very chill, no problems at all. But hearing something, bark, 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 bark. What could be causing that?
Well, I mean, we can't forget that dogs naturally are animals that pay attention to things and then alert others of whatever may be around. So that may just be his job, to alert everybody of everything. So, maybe trying to say, oh, thank you. We heard it. we're good. Because every dog likes to have a job as well. So that may just be his job.
I like that idea. It reminds me of 101 Dalmatians. I don't know if you're familiar with that old Disney cartoon, but they had the Twilight bark, where, you know, like they'll bark and then they'll pass it on. Another dog will bark and they just kind of pass it down the street in their different neighborhoods and communities. So maybe Winston, maybe what we don't know, maybe it is his job. Maybe he's part of that Twilight bark and he's just, you know, fulfilling his destiny, you know, but no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
I mean, it may also be worth asking him, you know, and see what he says. You know, asking him, why do you bark so much? What's that all about?
Ask him if it's a priority.
Yeah, well, and if that dog spoke back to me in human language, I would be like, that makes sense, because that dog seems so human. I know we have about 10-ish, a little bit more. We can be a little soft on it, but 10-ish minutes, and we haven't even tackled the biggest, in my opinion, elephant in the room that James brought up a couple times. I know that I asked you in the green room, vaccines. And, you know, just a little background for our audience. I had, and Rachel had, all of our vaccines, you know, up to get into college, and they, you know, have all the stuff that you have to do. Now at the time, I mean, we're older, so we've had maybe 11 vaccinations in our life, right? These days, you know, to get to 18 years old, they're doing like 72 vaccinations. Although I know that's changing now for humans. But our daughters were not vaccinated at all. And for, you know, choice, we let them make that choice when they became 18, what they wanted to do with it. But we thought that's the approach that we all took as parenting for our children. And they're super healthy. We've had no problems. They travel the world. They're very responsible, and et cetera. And this isn't a question of that exactly, about the moral or the not moral or this or that, again, black and white. But with our dogs, when we go to the vet, there's always the discussion of, hey, your dogs are due for fill in the blank, you know? And this is, I know this, for me, it seems strange because it seems out of alignment for our philosophy with our own children and the way we approach vaccinations now, with our understanding the way things like viruses work and public health issues and public health matters. But we've always just gone along with the vet, like, oh yeah, go ahead and do this, do that, do the other thing. And I understand that for, you know, boarding purposes and grooming purposes, and, you know, so like there's rabies and bordetella, and I mean, and there's things that if you want to participate in certain aspects of life, like those are just the laws and those are just the rules. I get that part. But there's a whole bunch of other vaccinations that seem like they've come out recently. Oh man, lepto. And I mean, I could go on and on about these, you know, I think they have flu back for dogs. I don't even know if that's true, but I think they have, I mean, yeah, they have basically everything that a human, and then put it in the dog. And we've always opted out of other than the bare essentials. And now I'm even questioning the bare essentials. So I trust you. I love our vets. They're great people. They genuinely care. They'll come in and answer your questions. And sometimes they get curious and they'll do research, but they're not holistically minded or trained. They're very conventional, great vets to have in the time of an emergency, et cetera, right? Great people. Our dogs are very well cared for. Dr. Odette, tell me your thoughts on vaccinations in general.
Yeah,
for animals.
Yeah, for animals. Yeah. So the vaccines that you mentioned, you know, lepto and flu and all that, those have been around for quite some time. So for dogs and cats, we have vaccines that are against viruses, and then we have vaccines that are against bacteria, like lepto, bordetella, Lyme disease. Those are all bacteria, and vaccines against bacteria are never very efficient. And the duration of immunity is questionable. They also tend to be creating more side effects, and just in general don't seem to be working as well, especially the bordetella vaccine, parainfluenza, those, I mean, they're pretty much useless, because if you go to a kennel, you know, like you board your animal, even if you're vaccinating your dog, you may actually get a dog back who has kennel cough. So it doesn't really protect. Plus, certain vaccines, they also shed afterwards for several weeks. So what most people do before they go on vacation, they do a quick trip to the vet to get the last shots they need, and then they stick their animal into the boarding place, and then the animals are stressed and their immunity is a little bit lower to begin with because of that. And then I also shed, so then everybody gets it. So it's a really a great incubation cesspool. And then the vaccines that are for viruses like parvo, distemper, for example, those are vaccines that usually create a lasting immunity. So after they had the puppy vaccines, they really don't need any more. Because the vaccine, the duration of the immunity is usually lifelong, because and we can do titer testing for that, to see where they're at. And so generally I recommend doing a titer test early, after they had their initial series, if you end up choosing to do that. And then if they have a positive response, it means that they're probably going to be good for life because they developed antibodies, which is the titer level, but they also developed memory cells. Basically, so they have memory cells that if they were to be exposed, they would start to make antibodies really quickly. It's kind of like with us, right? If we get like measles, for example, I had measles as a child. So I have memory cells. My immune system made memory cells. And I may not have a titer anymore, but the memory cells, they will kick in quickly and make antibodies. So that's the same with dogs and cats with more of the virus ones. Rabies is a little bit different. It's a virus as well, but the way they make the vaccine, they have to make it a little bit differently because there can't be any kind of chance that an animal could develop rabies from the vaccine itself. So they they kill it, and we don't really know what the duration of immunity is because we don't have any studies that were done long enough. There was one study that was done through the Rabies Challenge Fund, and they found that it lasts at least 5 years, but beyond that, they couldn't really show because when they wanted to re-challenge the animal with the actual virus, they couldn't get their hands on any virus. So they couldn't do it, the challenge. So that was pretty sad. So the law right now still says every 3 years. Unless they're puppies. The first one is always a 1 year and then gets repeated a year later, and then from then on it should never be a 1 year vaccine again. And I want to put that out there because there are veterinarians who will still vaccinate for rabies every single year, and that is absolutely not necessary and is just putting the animals at risk for more side effects, adverse reactions than is necessary. And there are also certain states that will allow medical exemption. So if you live in a state like that, then you can ask your vet to write a medical exemption if they have any issues. Although I will say that most veterinarians are worried about writing exemption letters, particularly conventional vets. So maybe seeking out a holistic vet who will write one of those is a good idea.
I appreciate that. There's a lot of take home there, and I have questions about titer levels now. Now I just, as a functional medicine internist, I want to just do titer levels now and look at that stuff. Same things I was questioning, not trying to be weird, but you mentioned measles, but I was questioning this about wild COVID, people that caught COVID, what are their titer levels? I mean, do we have to, I wasn't worried about vaccines anyway, but just same questions I had. I appreciate that. I also wanted to give, we mentioned it. I know we're getting to the end of the show, and clearly, Dr. Odette, we're going to have you on for part 2. I have 8 softball questions. And so far we've gotten through 2 of them. And everything else we've talked about has just been organic, so I appreciate this. But I want to talk a little bit about the Pet Health Accelerator program, and give you a little opportunity to chat about that. It's a virtual program, for pets, and just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's something that I kind of developed out of necessity because I saw that as a veterinarian practicing, I never had enough time to really provide people with the foundational knowledge that they needed to have. And especially in this day and age with what I call the internet vomit, we're back to that, where there's so much information out there. I found that, people, they have a lot of pieces of knowledge, but they don't know how to put it together. And so not having enough time to really provide people with that foundation of knowledge when I was just seeing them for an hour, every so often. And also the fact that it was hard to really answer all the questions, aside from that. I wanted to create something that really was empowering pet parents to have the knowledge and then also become better at taking care of their animals and know more what to do and be more empowered that way. And because what I also see a lot, and we alluded to that a little bit in the beginning, is that people have, think that diet is going to do it, or this supplement or that supplement. So, this shiny thing over here and this magic pill over there is going to fix the animal. So I was seeing so much of that as well. So I wanted to provide people with a space where they can really learn how to take care of their animals, and then at the same time also guide them through the process with their own animals so that they really learn. Because I myself, when I had my chronic health issues, chronic fatigue, autoimmune diseases, I tried a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then, but I never put the pieces together. And it took me forever to figure out what it really takes to heal. And so because once I figured it out, it accelerated my healing process. I then started to use that same strategy with my patients. And so that's basically what this is about is, they get the foundation of knowledge, and then they get me coaching them through the strategy that I lay out for their individual animal and supporting them through, like weekly sessions so that they really can accelerate the process and not be left alone trying to figure it out, and not really get anywhere. And in animals, it's especially important because it took me, 10 years to figure it out for myself. Animals don't have 10 years. I mean, that's their lifespan for some of them. So I wanted to be able to provide something that kind of filled that void and that hole a little bit to really empower people. And then they still work with their vets, so it's a win-win-win-win situation. It helps the animal, it helps the pet parent, it helps the veterinarians who work with them as well, because then they don't have to answer thousands of questions all the time. So that's kind of,
wow.
my process. So it's a 6-month program, basically.
I appreciate that. And I think that, going through a program like that as a pet owner could be so valuable, like you said, and fill in some of those gaps that maybe conventional vets don't have answers for, provide some of the, science, if you'll let me say that, the science behind what we're talking about that then can become a dialogue between, the pet owner and their conventional vet. It's interesting. It's very similar to what Rachel and I do. Our human clients. It's very, very similar. So I just wanted to say also that as far as for our listeners that want to connect with Dr. Odette, learn more about the Pet Health Accelerator program, we will have those links to that program at Get Better Faster Podcast. Go to her episode page and we'll have all of those notes, all those links there so you can connect with Dr. Odette. James, go ahead. Yeah,
I really just want to acknowledge the conversation today. Super organic, super helpful. Lots of knowledge, great things that we shared. Good thing I didn't throw up, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I was close as we were talking about fecal transplants. I was like, oh gosh, this slurry thing. Like if I never heard the word slurry again, I'll be fine.
We'll take it out of the dictionary. How about that?
No. It's your word. I'm just probably not going to be using it much. But I have to ask you at this juncture, is there anything we didn't ask you that you wanted to talk to our audience today about?
Well, we sort of touched just a little bit on vaccines, so there's certainly more there. Hormones are a big thing as well. Nervous system, I can geek out on that one too. So there's certainly some other subjects as well, but I think we covered a lot today already. So
we'll tee those topics up for the next time we have you on the show, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'd love that. I would absolutely love that.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and say thank you so much for being on with us today. The show's been absolutely transformative. I'm sure there's our listeners, if you or your pet suffer bouncing from vet to vet, getting nowhere with allergies, gut issues, or chronic health problems, you just heard the roadmap to a different path. And I do know this before I completely like close this out today. People will spend more money on their pets and their cars than they will themselves. So all of a sudden, when they come and see a doctor like Dr. Jason, they become like immediate skeptics as to why do I have to do that? And how does it cost that much? Whereas if it's a pet, people are just like, all right, take my card. So anybody that's watching this that is like skeptic of like taking care of themselves, if a practitioner says this is what you got to do, just do it. And, just realize that it's an expense that's actually an investment, just as you would invest in the health of your pet or getting from point A to point B in your vehicle. So, Dr. Suter, Dr. Suter, your approach through the Pet Health Accelerator, what you just talked about on the 6-month program, gives people a step-by-step guidance to understanding what's actually happening in your pet's body to take the right actions in the right order. No more guessing, no more Band-Aids. So you have an advocate there for you. If you sign up with her, go to getbetterfasterpodcast.com and check out the links. Remember, nobody's coming to save you, but you or your pet. But you have solutions like the Pet Health Accelerator that prove you can become your pet's greatest health advocate, just like Dr. Suter can be that for both of you. Dr. Suter, thanks again for sharing your wisdom with the Get Better Faster Nation, and to you all, our Get Better Faster Nation. Thank you for listening and your continued support. The best way to show your support is today. Share this episode with somebody who has a pet that needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and get the behind the scenes insights we've got coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up that are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Dr. Odette, it was a real pleasure to have you on today. Looking forward to session 2 with you. And Dr. Jason, absolute pro at this game. Thank you for being my co-host today. And all of you Get Better Faster Nation, like, subscribe, and share. Love and appreciate you guys.
Love you guys. Thanks, James. Thanks, Dr. Odette.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get Better Faster podcast. Join the movement and visit getbetterfasterpodcast.com to find all our episodes, micro content, and resources to help you and your family get better faster.